Hey, what's going on, you guys? This is Madam, and I'm coming back to you once again. This time, we're going to go over to the Independent, and this is in the crime section. It says Michigan church shooter had a past relationship with a Mormon woman in Utah and heavily used meth, friends reveal. I don't know why this is being reported. There's definitely been discourse in almost every platform about the man's political affiliation. Coming to find out, we know a little bit more about this man. So let's jump into this article. The man accused of unaliving four people and burning down a Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints church in Grand Blanc, Michigan, on Sunday, reportedly held a long simmering hatred for the faith and was struggling with substance abuse, according to people close to him. Two friends of Thomas Jacob Stanford, the 40-year-old gunman who was shot and unalived by police in the church parking lot, told the New York Times that Stanford hated grew out of his hatred grew out of a breakup he had with a girlfriend more than 10 years prior. According to the friends, Stanford would rant about the LSD church even at his best friend's wedding and called the faith the Antichrist. He reportedly even took the chance to complain about the church to a politician, canvassing homes in his neighborhood. On the day of the mass shooting, Stanford crashed his Chevy Silverado pickup truck into the church and then proceeded to open fire with an assault rifle on the congregation inside. At some point during the attack, Stanford used an accelerant to start a fire that would ultimately consume the majority of the church. Stanford eventually exited the church, where he began shooting at fleeing churchgoers. He fired through the windshield of at least one vehicle, narrowly missing the driver. Mm-mm-mm. Police received a call that a shooting was underway at 10:25 a.m. and within 30 seconds, a Grand Blanc Township police officer and a armed officer from the state's Department of Natural Resources responded to the scene. A gunfight ensued, but the officers ultimately unalived Stanford. Four people died tragically, and at least one of the eight wounded was a child uh, who was 6 years old. That's sad. Peter Tisigny told the Times that he knew Stanford for practically his entire life and described him as his best friend. He said Stanford was a class clown, but deployment to Iraq with the Marines changed him and turned him into a more serious person upon his return. It wasn't just the military that changed Stanford, according to Tersigny. A move to Utah and a habit of abuse methamphetamines further transformed his friend. During his stay in Utah, Stanford reportedly fell in love with a woman who was part of the LSD. It's unclear exactly how involved he and the woman were, but what uh, Telesigi did say is that the relationship ended in a way that left Stanford deeply hurt. Mentally, Stanford was in rough shape, he told the paper. He said it became very clear to everyone who would listen that Stanford had a problem with the LDS church. Mm-mm-mm. He got this whole he got this whole fascination with Mormons, and they are the Antichrist, and they are going to take over the world. Francis Tuskegee, Peter's twin brother and another friend of Stanford, told the Times. Stanford was so obsessed with the church that the subject even came up at Peter's wedding. All he could talk about was Mormons, Francis said. I was like, dude, nobody wants to hear about this stuff. Stanford's landlord in Utah, Sandra Windsor, also confirmed to the paper that he had been in a relationship with an extremely religious LDS member. She said he felt pressured to join the church. He wasn't so sure that he wanted to become a member of the church, Winter said, but he really wanted to be with this woman. Despite the incident being more than a decade in the past, Stanford was still ranting about LDS members, even just a few days before his attack. Chris Johns, who is running for city council in Burton, was out canvassing homes and told the Times he met Stanford. Within a few minutes, Stanford was telling him about how Mormons are the Antichrist. The FBI is still investigating the shooting and considers the incident a target attack of violence. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said during a press briefing that Stanford was someone who hated people of the Mormon faith. While it does not appear that Stanford was a supporter of President Trump, a Trump political sign was found on his fence. He was reportedly photographed wearing a conservative t-shirt, and friends had told the press he held right-wing beliefs. No evidence has been revealed thus far to suggest his motives were political. Francis insisted shooting isn't a mega event and said the attack isn't political. Investigators are still investigating what set Stanford off. Peter told the Times that he last talked to Stanford on September 18th. Stanford reportedly asked Peter to help him build a deck 10 days before Stanford attacked the church. And that is the end of the article right there. Um, just really devastating how uh, apparently, he had some issues that he had not worked out. You know, given everything that he has experienced from, I'm assuming, his deployment and, the use of, narcotics and things of that nature, it kind of turned the table for him. I believe that it was a combination of things, and, you know, details are still unclear of the depth of his relationship with that woman in Utah. And, it's just a really sad situation that other people had to suffer because this man was clearly going through some issues. It just brings me back to me always talking about service members and veterans having the proper care that they need, not just for their physical body, but also for their mental as well. A lot of times, people, unless you are a part of the military or have had family members in the military, how challenging it can be to, have them leave and come back from deployment, and it's totally different. I'm pretty sure a lot of people will have stories like that, similar to that. Some minor, some major, unfortunately, but this is even more proof that, one, there needs to be a full push to, open up more options and more services for veterans and service members, active and former. They need this help. And I think that it's due to them to receive this help. That's the least that this country can do for them. War changes people. Um, and that's, unless you've been in their shoes, unless you have experience in the sights and sounds of their deployment, then you can only imagine some of the things that they have witnessed. So very unfortunate, very tragic. And again, mental health needs to be a strong option for these service members, regardless of what deployment, uh, you know, they were in. It needs to be also a strong push for drug counseling and drug programs, rehabilitation, and things like that to integrate them back into society. Because honestly speaking, some people do need that. And unfortunately, this is just a story that, you know, tragically ended up this way. Also, it also points to the fact that, you know, every time now is an active shooter, the finger pointing begins, the accusations begin. Oh, it's this person and that person. These are human beings. We do not know what is going on in their lives. We don't know if it's a contributing factor. Per this report, this article is saying that it wasn't politically motivated. However, you know, people will still tend to, point fingers for either side, whatever side they choose to align themselves with. And it does a disservice to the victims, and it does a disservice to the actual person that committed the crimes, because again, there is contributing factors in all of these cases that have happened. um, you know and I feel that their political alignment or their beliefs is just a small part of the whole picture. But let me know what you guys think. Drop down in the comment section. I would definitely love to hear from you. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And thank you so much for watching this video. I truly do appreciate it. And with that, I'm going to head on out. But always remember, be good to yourself first. And free speech is the right of everyone, not just a few and not just a privilege.